Some titles in literary history are so big, so monumental, that you just have to ask, how? The father of English criticism? That's not a title you get by accident. So how did one guy, John Dryden, writing way back in the 17th century, manage to completely change the way we talk about literature forever? And look, this wasn't just some random compliment. That quote, it's from Samuel Johnson, an absolute titan of literature himself. Johnson calling you the father of English criticism is like Gordon Ramsay calling you the father of modern cooking. It tells you we are dealing with a real, true innovator. So what exactly did he do to earn that kind of praise?
Well, to get a handle on his impact, you have to know when he was doing it. Dryden was born in 1631, and he was a poet and playwright who in 1668 became England's very first poet laureate. Pretty cool. But that same year, he published something that would have an even bigger legacy, his Essay of Dramatic Poesy. And that essay kicked off a revolution.
Okay, so to really grasp why Dryden's work was so revolutionary, we need to understand the old guard he was up against. In his day, the literary world was completely dominated by this idea called Neoclassicism.
Neoclassicism was all about looking back to the classics, ancient Greece and Rome, as the absolute peak of artistic perfection. This was not a time for wild, messy creativity. It was about order, it was about reason, and most of all, it was about following a very strict set of rules. Think of it like art with a super detailed instruction manual.
So, what was on this creative checklist? Well, get this. First, you had the 3 unities. Your play had to have one single plot, take place in one location, and all happen within 24 hours. No sprawling epics allowed. Next up, purity of genre. Tragedies are tragic, comedies are funny, and you never, ever mix the two. Finally, decorum. Characters had to act their social class, and nothing too improper could happen on stage. It was a really tight, really restrictive formula. But this neat and tidy rulebook had one massive, glaring problem. And that problem's name was William Shakespeare. The English stage was already home to his sprawling, messy, rule-breaking, and let's be honest, absolutely brilliant plays. So how do you square the rigid rules of the ancients with the glorious chaos of your own national hero? This is where Dryden gets really smart. In his essay, instead of just getting on a soapbox, he stages a debate between 4 guys. One of them, a character he names Neander, which literally means new man, argues for the modern English style. It's basically Dryden's clever way of making his case. And this lays out the conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got French drama, the poster child for neoclassicism. It followed all the rules. And on the other, you have the wild English drama, mixing tragedy and comedy with these huge plots, breaking rules all over the place. And Dryden, speaking through Neander, argues that all this variety isn't a flaw. It's actually a huge strength. Just listen to how Dryden talks about Shakespeare's genius. He says Shakespeare didn't need dusty old rule books from the ancients. Why? Because his talent came from somewhere deeper. He just had to look into the human heart and write what he saw. It was pure natural intuition, not some stuffy academic training. And this right here, this was his knockout punch. By calling Shakespeare the Homer of English poets, Dryden was doing something totally radical. He was basically saying, hey, we don't need to look to the Greeks for our literary heroes. We've got our own right here. He was forging a new, independent English literary tradition, one that didn't have to apologize to anybody. But here's the thing. Dryden wasn't a total rebel just for the sake of it. He had a ton of respect for the classics. So instead, he came up with this great compromise, a new tradition that could honor the wisdom of the ancients while still celebrating the genius of modern writers like Shakespeare. So what did his new and improved rulebook look like? First, he said unity is still important, but it's about having a coherent story, not a rigid time and place. Second, plays should be probable. They need to feel true to life. Third, and this is huge, he said writers should follow nature by looking inward at human psychology, just like Shakespeare did. And finally, he insisted you have to think about your audience. Art is meant to have an impact on people.
And it's this brilliant compromise that makes Dryden so important. He isn't just a neoclassicist. He's really a thinker caught between two worlds. And he becomes this crucial bridge between the age of reason and the age of imagination that was just around the corner. You can actually see him wrestling with these two ideas in his own writing. On the one hand, he says poetry must serve moral truth and be ethical. That's his classical side talking, the belief that art's main job is to teach us something and be rational.
But then he says this: delight is the chief, if not the only, end of poesy. Suddenly, pleasure and wonder and enjoyment are the main goals. Instruction? Oh, that's just secondary. For his time, this was a totally radical idea, and it points straight toward the Romantic movement that would later champion emotion and imagination above all else.
And that is the tension right at the heart of everything he does. Can art be a tool for moral teaching and a source of pure imaginative delight? By arguing that, yeah, it can be both, Dryden perfectly captures the shift from one era to the next. He gave a nod to the past while cracking open the door to the future.
Which leaves us with a pretty cool thought. This debate that Dryden started over 300 years ago, it is absolutely still alive and well. What is the ultimate point of art? Is it here to instruct us, to make us better people, or is its highest calling simply to delight us, to move us, and to fill us with a sense of wonder? It's a question just as relevant now as it was back in 1660.